another case that from the Supreme Court that actually has a big impact here locally, and it had to do with the homelessness. And basically, the Supreme Court said that cities can make their own decisions on whether or not they want to arrest the homeless or move the homeless, that sort of thing. And a lot of people were really upset, like, oh my God, where are these people going to go? What can they do? The homeless have nowhere to go. And now this evil Supreme Court is saying being homeless is illegal and they're going to throw you in jail for it. But it's hard. I mean, homelessness is a very complicated problem. And homeless people, there needs to be a place for them to go. And I think that's one of the rightful things the government can do is to create zones where people can camp overnight. I mean, it's horrible that we have so much homelessness in the first place. This goes back to the housing crisis in California that I commented on earlier. That's the main reason we have homelessness, is because housing has become too expensive and they can no longer afford to pay the bill. And then they become homeless. Are there other factors, mental health or drugs or alcohol? Yeah, those all play a role. But the main reason is that housing is too expensive. They can't afford it and they become homeless and they begin living out of their car, or they live in a tent, or they live somewhere else. We could solve this problem because you don't hear much about homelessness where housing's inexpensive. You don't hear about a huge homelessness crisis in Mississippi or in Missouri or in other states where you don't have insane housing prices. But in California, we do. And that's why we have so many homeless people. So this kind of opens the door up for a lot of cities. And I read an article recently that Escondido is now going to be able to have the power now to forcibly remove homelessness from parts of their city, in some cases to arrest them. Now, it's awful when homeless people are arrested. We don't want to see that. And some people would say that's inhumane. But at the same time, we can't just have homeless people, out on the streets. We can't have anarchy. So I would hope that local cities now would be able to create a zone where overnight camping is allowed. That also gives law enforcement the ability to keep an eye on it in a particularly central location. If resources need to be brought in to help the homelessness, then you have a central location for that. And then you have a lot less riffraff of homelessness scattered about, in some cases interfering with people's businesses, in other cases interfering with people's homes. And you can have a little bit more order to this. And frankly, it'd be a lot safer for the homeless if there was a zone. Now, the city of San Diego has set up parts of Balboa Park for homelessness. I think it's great. I mean, it sucks that there's homeless in the first place, and there's a lot of things that we need to do to resolve that. But right now, there's a homeless problem that needs to be addressed. Is Escondido now going to arrest people, put them in jail? I don't know. That's not going to solve the problem. What's Poway going to do? Right now, Poway, I don't think, has a homeless shelter. I don't know if they've forcibly removed anyone from homelessness in Poway. I know they have the authority to do it, but could they set up a place like in, if you go back to Gooden Ranch back there in the Sycamore Valley area of Poway, there's a big open space. There's a lot of places like that where they could set up a zone that's open for the homeless. What do you think of that? To make camping legal. And I think that would be a good short-term solution to this. But the Supreme Court has allowed that to occur. What do you think of that? Is that good? Is that bad? So we got this flurry of announcements, and it usually comes this time of the year. But the presidential immunity one was the one that drove everyone off the edge of a cliff, rightfully so, especially seeing what Trump has been saying about his candidacy and his plans once he's elected. He said straight up, I'm going to be a dictator on day one. And he doesn't back down from it at all. I mean, is that the kind of guy we want as president? And do we want a Supreme Court that's going to look the other way and give him immunity? That's dangerous, very dangerous. Okay, that's the Supreme Court. has implications here locally. I think this is interesting. The Chevron case, by the way, I am generally speaking in favor of what the Supreme Court did. So I don't like their immunity decision. I do like the Chevron decision. The homeless decision is a mixed reaction, but I think in the end, I think they made the right call. But what SCOTUS did to overturn Roe v. Wade was deplorable. It was awful. And there's been a lot of other cases where this Supreme Court has made terrible decisions, largely due to its more conservative leaning now. And it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts, because what you have is the court going out there and actively violating people's individual rights, or allowing the violation of individual rights to be legal. Now, I'm hopeful that with the Chevron case, passing, we're going to begin to see a scaling down of the regulatory state. I'm not going to say the deep state, that's the MAGA conspiracy theorists, but I'm going to say there is a regulatory state that has grown and grown and grown, has gotten more and more power, and has enacted and created rules on its own, unilaterally, to the point now where, we could be committing all sorts of illegal acts and not even realize it, because there are so many rules that have been set up by so many experts that, frankly, you wonder, do these rules really need to exist in a so-called free nation? And by the way, if we go back, as it seems we are, we're going to go back to the original premise of the three co-equal branches of government, where the courts are the ones that interpret the rules. But the courts bring in experts as part of that process. So it's not like you're going to have a bunch of, religious people in robes making decisions unilaterally. I mean, they're going to be bringing in experts in a lot of these cases as well. Now, how are they going to rule? I mean, we can have a conversation about that. But I think it's good that the executive branch has become too powerful. And frankly, I think that's why politics has become so divisive with people in our communities and around the nation. It's because politicians, particularly the President of the United States, has so much power to affect people's lives, to make businesses a success or a failure, to make your life hell or heaven. They have so much power to manipulate society, to rig it for their friends and their donors, that's the reason why we have so many problems. So the relaxing of a lot of this power of the executive branch and restoring more power to the judicial, and frankly, telling the legislative branch, Congress, to do their damn job and put power back in their position would be helpful. But of course, representatives and senators, they abdicate. They don't want to make tough decisions. They don't want to have to vote on difficult bills. And they never have open debate. When's the last time you saw open debate on the House floor and in a healthy and vigorous amendment process? They never do that. They negotiate these things in backroom deals. They bring them forward. They'd only bring it forward until they know they've got the votes. And every one of those senators and representatives are given like a 2,000-page document that they got to read in 24 hours and vote on it. And all they care about is getting reelected and holding on to their power. And if they can avoid having to make a tough call, if they can avoid having to vote on a controversial bill and just say, well, let the president, he has a pen and a phone, as President Obama said, let them make the decision. What do you think of that?